Welcome, Mr. Osborne.
How are you?
Welcome.
Great. Hi, hello.
OK, I think we're going to start with Sue Wimperney, who's the Chief Executive of the Lady Builder. Sue.
Congratulations on finally getting the economy sort of on a balanced level for the time being. I'm the owner of the Lady Builder, small to medium construction company. I'd like to know how young people are actually going to finally manage to get on the housing ladder. There's only 89,000 houses built in the last year. We need 250,000. What do you propose to do to improve this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me here. And your business is exactly the sort of business we want to see growing in our country and building more homes for people. I mean, I'm absolutely passionate about people having homes to rent and to buy for themselves. And I think you can do basically three things. First of all, you can provide economic stability. As you know, the reason why the housing market stopped building things was because the economy fell off a cliff. And everything we do in our country depends on a strong economy. You can't fund your NHS, but you also can't have your homes being built. So economic stability and security is the first thing. Second, we've got to be helping businesses like yours build those homes, and there are all sorts of ways we need to help you get the finance to get homes built. And then the final thing is you've got to help people afford those homes. And I've taken action to cut stamp duty so people find it easier to buy a home, introduce the Help to Buy scheme, which helps young people in particular who don't, for example, have money from mum and dad to help them get on the housing ladder. We've just announced this Help to Buy ISA, which is going to help them save for a deposit. So there's a whole range of things you can do. There's not a single silver bullet, but if you don't have a growing economy, then you don't have people who can afford homes or afford the rent for nice homes. And if you don't have economic stability, companies like yours can't grow and take people on.
Chancellor, I'm just going to chip in with a statistic here.
Yeah.
So far this Parliament, the average house building across the UK has been 140,000, and under the previous government, it was 190,000. This is the sort of failure that Sue's talking about.
Yeah, but what happened was the economy went off a cliff 7 years ago, and house building completely stopped. And trying to get the system going again has meant fixing the fundamentals of the economy. So the economy is starting to grow and create jobs, fixing the banking system so finance is available.
It's a major issue.
Yeah.
So they still have a lot to answer for.
Yeah.
And they're not releasing enough money for small businesses as well as for private owners or all the housing market. It's restricted by the banks.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. If you think of what happened to this country, we suffered a near heart attack with the collapse of our banking system. Now, because we've now got smaller banks emerging that can provide those loans, and the government's got a Help to Build scheme to help small builders such as yourselves, and the finance we're providing to the people who want to buy the homes, because they otherwise wouldn't be able to get the mortgage from the banks or they can't afford the deposit, you've got a rounded solution. And, you know, what I'd say to you, Faisal, is house building, as you say, went off a cliff 6 or 7 years ago, but in the last year we've had planning permissions for 250,000 homes, so the construction is now happening. The starts are the highest level for 7 years, but I am very much the first person to say there's a huge amount more to do in this space.
Anyone else want to come in on house building? Sorry, the lady, if you just identify yourself as well.
My name is Lina Boden. I'm actually running a company of mortgage advisors and financial advisors. There are enormous amount of people who cannot buy in London, and it's not because they don't have deposits. They can't find housing.
Yeah.
So, you know, ISA is great, very well received from the industry, but unless we build houses, it wouldn't help.
Yeah, look, I think you've got to build more homes in this country, and that means reforms which we've introduced to our planning system. And I think if you take London, there should be no excuse for not having housing built on brownfield sites in this city. Even in this city, there are still plenty of sites that are ready to be built on, but people can't get the planning permission. There are all sorts of bureaucratic delays in getting that. And we're creating these new housing zones with the Mayor of London, and I visited several of them myself with him. And our determination is to say, if you want to develop a brownfield site in this city to provide homes for Londoners and people who want to come and live in this city, then you should be getting that permission. And that will help the homes be provided. Because the planning system has been one of the biggest obstacles to getting homes built across the whole of the UK, including in this capital city.
OK, house building is an important issue, but let's move on to Kevin, who's the Chief Investment Officer of Brown Shipley on savings.
Hi there. It's now effectively 6 years since the Bank of England declared war on savers. In the 6 years, you've had roughly a fifth of your capital eroded in real terms if you left your money in a UK bank account. Interest rates are simply too low, and the measures you've mentioned, the Help to Buy scheme, the annuity reforms, pension reforms, etc., they're playing around the edges. When are we going to get interest rates back to where they need to be? And when will people get some sort of democratic process to influence what the Bank of England is doing?
Well, I'm not sure I can help you on the last bit. For this simple reason, I actually believe in an independent Bank of England, because I think these decisions on interest rates are better taken by people who aren't the politicians and would be changing the interest rates to try and win votes, for example, in an election. So I think it is better to have an independent Bank of England. Now, they have judged that because of what happened to our economy, you've had to have interest rates very, very low. And that's supported a lot of the businesses here and the people who want to buy the homes, people with mortgages and the like. But, of course, the people who've been hit, the people who paid an unfair price, if you like, are the savers. And so I think instead of raising interest rates just to help the savers, it's better to have a set of policies that help the savers directly and don't harm other people. And so things like the pensioner bonds we've had for older people with savings, that's been hugely popular, and we've sold £10 billion worth of that. The pension reform, which you mentioned, the thing I've just announced in the budget last week to say you don't have to pay tax on your income from savings, the Help to Buy ISA, the more generous ISAs. I mean, there's a whole set of things to say to people who have worked hard and saved hard all their lives, you deserve a better deal, you get access to your money, you get a better return on your money, we're cutting the taxes on you, because we understand that very low interest rates, while necessary to support the economy, have hit you, and you need additional help.
Kevin, you want him to set the interest rates?
Not necessarily. I agree with the independence of the bank, but you've sort of emphasised my point, which is the longer interest rates are kept at this rate, the more and more measures you will have to enact in order to address the balance. The Bank of England have had to introduce macroprudential policy. You're having to introduce actions for savers. The longer this goes on, the bigger and bigger the consequences are, until we get to a point where the Bank of England's independence will frankly be put at risk.
Yeah, look, you need to have the Governor of the Bank of England come and answer directly the question on interest rates, because we do... Well, I did appoint him. And by the way, I think the fact we got one of the very best people in the world, in Mark Carney, to come and do that job says a lot about our open economy and the fact we can attract people like him to jobs like that. He makes the decision on interest rates. But what I'd say to you is I don't think increasing interest rates just to help savers would help the rest of the economy. And after all, savers are invested in the rest of the economy. They've got in their pensions, they'll have shares in some of the companies that are represented here. And the fact that interest rates are so low, I think, is a very important reminder for everyone of this. Although our economy is recovering, and although actually we grew faster than almost any other country, major country in the world last year, and although we've got a lot of people in work now, it's still a very difficult economic situation out there. That's why interest rates are so much lower than they've been in other times in our nation's recent history. So let's not think the problems are over. For 1 second do I think the problems in the British economy are fixed. I think there's lots more work to do. The job isn't finished. And while the interest rates stay so low, we should be helping savers. The big centrepiece thing in my budget last week was a big tax cut for savers, taking 95% of people out of savings tax, precisely to help people who are doing the right thing, working hard, putting away something for a rainy day. We should be helping them be on their side. OK, well, we have to move on. Next question, Adam Rossiter, who's Managing Director of Bulk Powders.
Hi. You announced last week that you're increasing UK TI's resources to double the support for British exporters to China. But for brands like mine that are looking to expand and grow closer to home, what are you going to do for SMEs that are looking to grow into key closer markets such as Europe? And can I ask you, what's your business? What do you sell? Sports nutrition brand. So we sell direct to consumers across the UK and Europe. And you want to sell into European markets? Yeah, we currently already do, but we're looking to expand more and more. And there seems to be very little support for brands who are trying to grow closer to home. Right. I mean, first of all, we shouldn't forget that Europe is a huge market for us, and all the problems you continue to read about in Greece and France and so on, they have affected the British economy because they directly affect a business like yours. There aren't so many European consumers who can afford the products that we're making.
So that's why we have said, look, let's look further afield. Let's look at these new growing places like China, like India and the like, to make sure that you've got more options. But we also need to help you when you sell your goods into Europe. Now, we've put a lot more resource into this thing called UK Trade and Investment. I think most people would say it's doing a lot better job than it was 5 years ago. But again, there's more to be done. I think particularly more to be done to support small businesses. But I would say, if I was trying to identify some of the big problems for the British economy going forward, it's still that we don't export enough. We do not export, for example, the same as the German economy. And it's not the biggest companies in Britain that struggle to do that. It's often the small and medium-sized companies that are having trouble. And that's where there is a big role for government in saying, look, this is how you do it. Have you thought of this market? We can help you in this particular way. And expanding the support we've given to UKTI is something I've managed to do in every single budget.
Adam's wider issue is that the trade deficit's now at 35 billion, widest since 2010.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, the latest trade deficit numbers, which came out just 2 weeks ago, actually showed the smallest trade deficit for 15 years. But again, this is a question of, lots done, but still more to do. And we have got to, as a country, earn our way in the world. All the things we want in our country, the great NHS, the great education system, jobs for young people, these come when we have a successful economy that is trading around the world, making things here in Britain, selling them abroad, as you are doing. And we need to back people like you with competitive taxes, economic stability, making sure you can employ great skilled people coming out of our colleges and universities and schools, and helping you get into those export markets and creating a culture in British business where we go beyond our shores to sell. We're a great trading nation. That's part of our history and heritage. I want to make sure it's part of our future.
A related issue. We've got to move on. Raf is over here.
Yeah, a question about the EU. Your party has promised a referendum on the EU membership, but given the importance of the EU for trade, given how many talented EU people work here and contribute to the British economy, it seems very risky to even consider that. Like, what is the business case that you could imagine for potentially leaving the EU?
Well, I would say business people are the first to complain about European red tape and some of the problems in European markets that means Europe's not growing as fast as we'd like. And I don't want to live in a continent that's pricing itself out of the world economy. I don't want my children to grow up in a part of the world that used to be where everything happened and isn't anymore. And so we've got to make sure the whole of Europe, Britain included, reforms. And I think the position that we are advocating, myself, David Cameron, and so on, is where the majority of the British people are, not where everyone is. Some people want to leave, come what may. Some people want to go even deeper in and have Britain join the euro and so on. Of course, there are people who have that view. But our view, which is we want to be in Europe but not run by Europe, is where I think the majority of British people are and the majority of British businesses are. And we want a better deal for the whole of Europe. We should not be happy with the fact there are so many unemployed young people across our continent. So we want a better deal for the whole of Europe. We also want a better deal for Britain. We're not in the euro. We need a proper relationship with the members who are in the euro. And that's what we intend to achieve. That's the reform we want to help you create jobs, to help Britain succeed. And then we were talking about democracy just now earlier. Then we say to the British people, you decide. We'll put it to you in a referendum. You make this big decision about our country's future. Because I suspect for many people, certainly for myself, we weren't adults at the time of the last referendum we had on this when Britain was going into the EEC, or had just been in for a couple of years. This is a big decision about our future. But I think if we achieve that reform, we'll get a better deal for Britain in Europe. And it's not damaging business now because we're getting more investment into Britain than any other European country. So businesses are still voting with their jobs and their investment into the UK.
There's a why. Anyone else want to come in on the European Union? There's lots of different opinions. Yes, gentleman here.
There is one European measure that you haven't taken, which we could, that 25 out of 27 European countries have done, and that's to reduce the rate of VAT down to the European average for hotel rooms. So from Greece to Germany, from Spain to Sweden, they've cut the rate of VAT. It's the quickest way to stimulate the economy and also to drive exports. Tourism is our fifth biggest export. We just talked about the trade deficit. We just talked about the EU. That's one EU measure we're standing out that we are not following, whereas everyone else is. Can we have some hope that you may bring that in?
Well, the truth is I have looked very closely at this measure. This is a proposal from the hotel sector and restaurants and so on to cut VAT. And two things that struck me about it. I mean, first of all, it is very expensive to do. It costs many billions of pounds. And second of all, in quite a lot of these other countries, it didn't actually lead to the boost in the restaurant business and the like that some those governments had hoped. I'd rather use that money to promote tourism. You know, you have to make choices in my job about where you're using your resources. I'd rather use the money to, you know, sell Britain abroad. We've got that Great Britain campaign, which I think is the most successful tourist campaign we've had for many a decade, to make sure we've got investment into... I mean, you run a hotel, do you? Right. So I could spend the billions of pounds we're talking about to make sure the A303 is better, the rail link down to the southwest is better. I've committed £7 billion of money to improve the transport links there. We're putting more money into the southwest tourism industry. We want to connect up the southwest. I think that is a better long-term investment, dare I say it, for the southwest, for the tourist industry in the southwest. And it shows as a country you're thinking for the long term. That I've never ever said to anyone there are short-term fixes for Britain. I have not been someone who has got up in this job and said, you know what, I can solve Britain's problems with the stroke of a pen or with this simple tax cut. I've always said to people, fixing what went wrong, making sure Britain's better prepared for the future, that is a long-term job. And you know, for me, announcing improvements to the A303, that terribly congested road, I'm not going to see that happen overnight. It's not going to be ready in time for the general election. But I do know that in 5, 6, 7 years' time, when that road is totally complete, it'll make a massive difference to businesses and people living in the southwest. And I could say the same about projects across the whole of the UK. So I think we've got to stop thinking short-term as a country and start thinking long-term.
Thank you, Chancellor. OK, we're going to take a question from social media, from Facebook. Ellie Bromilo, why are old people still dying because they can't afford to heat their homes in the winter?
Well, I hope there are, of course, it's an absolute tragedy if anyone is in that situation. But we have protected winter fuel payments. I've made lots of difficult decisions, which people have rightly asked me questions about why they were necessary. But I didn't take the decision to cut the winter fuel payments precisely because I don't want to see old people struggling with their fuel bills. We've also increased the state pension every year, triple locked the state pension. So pensioners now get almost £1,000 more a year because of the increases in the basic state pension. And people say to me, oh, well, you're just helping the older people in our society. But I would say this. First of all, these are people who've worked hard all their lives, made a massive contribution to our society, have the least opportunity to vary their income. And second, I have taken a difficult decision on the pension age to say that should start going up in line with life expectancy, because I'd rather have generous pensions, generous heating allowances for people, and not have to cut those, but just make sure we can afford it as a country by increasing the pension age. So this is all part of my approach, which has been to try and take the big, long-term decisions we need for our country. And I think older people in this country, and indeed more generally the country as a whole, is in a fundamentally stronger position than it was 5 years ago.
We're going to push on to Shana Wynne, who's one of our Stand Up Accounted contributors.
Hi. So zero-hour contracts are the most common type of employment in my area. And there have already been some measures to help people on them, but you can still turn up for work and then there's no work there for you. So that's creating a lot of lack of job security, which also affects production. So what more will you do to protect people on zero-hour contracts?
I mean, maybe I'll stand up and see you at the end there. But which area do you come from, then? You were saying in your area.
Redditch, near Birmingham.
Right, yeah. I mean, look, zero-hours contracts are contracts that have been abused, and we've brought in regulation for the first time. I think the biggest abuse you get is these exclusivity. So someone is on a zero-hours contract, but their company will not let them work for any other company, even though they're not guaranteed any hours of work. So a law has now gone through Parliament, which we've introduced to stop that happening. And more generally across the whole population, around 2% of people are on zero-hours contracts. And of course, for some people, they do want that flexibility to work for several people and vary their hours as possible. But the best answer I've got for people who don't want to be on a zero-hours contract is to try and create more full-time jobs for people that they do want to take. And we are creating a huge number of jobs in this country. I say we, and it's the businesses here who are doing that. And we've got a record number of people in work at the moment. We've got a record number of women in work at the moment. And so and 80% of those jobs are full-time. So the best thing I can do is have an economy where business feel confident that they want to grow and take people on, where it pays to work. And, of course, we increase our tax-free personal allowance now. It's going up to £11,000 over the next couple of years. And that helps the person who doesn't want to be on the zero-hours contract, wants that full-time job, because there'll be more opportunities in Redditch and elsewhere.
Contracts actually want more work, and they're most commonly to be women or age 60 and above. So we're not talking just about my generation, we're talking about old people that can't get a job. The only job that they're getting offered by Job Centre and stuff, 0-hour contracts, they've got no stability, they can't eat sometimes because they've just got no work. But I suppose you don't really see that. So,
of course we see it in our country, and I want to get rid of that. And the way you get rid of it is not, again, by sort of thinking I can sit in number 11 Downing Street and write some law that stops it happening. What I can do is create an environment in which the businesses represented here grow and they create jobs and they offer that full-time post to that person who can't get the full-time post at the moment. And that, as I say, is not something that happens overnight. It happens when you've got an economy that people have confidence in. People say, you know, I am going to go out there and get myself some more skills because I think there's going to be a job at the end of it for me. I am a small business and I am going to take some, I run a small business, I am going to take someone on, I think I'm going to take that risk. You know, that's the...
They're pushing more 0-hour contracts, they're pushing more small paid apprenticeships, you know, and internships. It's growing. You're banging the, you know, Conservatives are banging the drum about, oh, more people are employed than ever before. Yeah, but are they getting work? Are they getting a paycheck? Are they getting stability? No, they're getting a 0-hour contract job. No support from the benefits system, even though they're actively looking for work. You know, these are the people that need to be more considered because then that's reflecting straight onto mental health as well. People are depressed because they're stuck in a rut. They can't find work. They've got no help in the system either. So,
well, more and more people are getting those jobs. When people were unemployed in very large numbers 5 years ago. Now we've got a record number of people in work. 80% of those jobs are full-time. And you come from the Midlands. There's a job being created every 10 minutes in the Midlands. And that's the best answer. Of course, people, look, when economic policy fails, when your economy crashes, you know, the people who suffer are precisely the people you are talking so passionately about. They are the people, the poorest in our society, who suffer. And the way you can help is by running an economy that is stable, that is growing, that is investing, that is creating jobs, where businesses are expanding. That is the best possible answer to the people that you are talking about.
Thank you, Chancellor. Did you want to come in on that?
I did. Sue Toplowski from Image Line. One of the biggest stoppers of growth at the moment is business rates. My own business, I've just had a 300% increase in my business rates. I'm moving now because I've got to downsize. I can't afford the cost. That means for 5 years I can't take on staff. So the biggest stopper of actually growth and taking on apprenticeships and growing my company is business rates. It's such a failing tax now. It's unfair. It's unjust. We need to really look at the whole thing and not just tinker at the edges with your report. What we need to do is sit down all together and come up with a win-win that actually solves this. Can we have a pledge from you that we're going to really seriously look at this issue because it is stopping growth?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, and I completely agree with everything you said. So business rates has been a system that's been around for a long time, but our economy has changed a huge amount. There's lots more of it online. It's a good place to talk about it here at Facebook. And, of course, if you go into town centres, they're very different from what they were 5, 10, 15 years ago because habits have changed. And the business rate system has not really kept pace with that at all. And so I think we can do two things. First of all, there's the short term, and I've tried to give a lot of help, particularly to the smaller businesses. We've taken a third of the smaller businesses out of the business rates altogether. Every single shop on the high street, every single small shop on the high street is going to get a £1,500 cheque at the beginning of April to help reduce their rates bill or to reduce their rates to zero if that's what it takes. And we're also capping business rates and so on. So that's the short-term help. But the real help is a long-term review, what you're talking about. Now, we've got to have this up and running by 2017. That sounds like quite a long way away, but actually to talk to all the businesses, get the law through Parliament, you've really got to get motoring now to get it ready for 2017. And we are doing that, and I promise you it is a totally no-holds-barred. You know, we will absolutely look at what is required
But
for our modern business rates.
You said it'll be fiscally neutral, so there's no tax cut.
Well, we have to make a decision in our country. The business rates raises just over £20 billion a year, and if we were talking, maybe we'll talk about public services, but this is an economy-focused debate. But you can't fund your NHS, you can't fund your police service, your army, and so on if you're not collecting money as well. You do it by growing your economy and collecting more revenue, but you also do it by controlling public spending. And when it comes to business rates, I've said, look, let's not pretend there's some simple answer of abolishing this big tax because it raises all that money for our public services. But let's see how it can be much more fairly administered, how it can be much more fairly attuned to the modern economy, so it doesn't have the effects that you are talking about.